Las Vegas, 1972. The curtain had barely lifted when Elvis saw him. Uniform pressed, duffel at his feet, eyes locked on the stage. A young soldier, hours from deployment. Elvis didn't miss a note. But he didn't miss that look either. Before we get to what Elvis did next, make sure you're here for the moments that show the man behind the music, the kindness that never made the headlines. The brass section hit first, a sharp, golden burst that rolled across the International Hotel showroom. Then the drums, crisp and steady, locking in the groove. The stage curtain rippled, parting just enough for a single beam of white light to cut through the haze. And there he was, Elvis Presley in a white jumpsuit, rhinestones catching the spotlight in quick flashes. The crowd erupted, a rising wave of applause and cheers. But in the middle of that storm, Elvis's eyes kept moving, scanning, searching. It wasn't the usual Vegas crowd tonight. Oh, there were sequins and bright blouses. But just to the right of center stage sat someone who didn't match the sparkle. Front row, army dress greens, boots polished to a mirror shine, a duffel bag tucked neatly under his chair. His posture was rigid, back straight, hands folded on his lap. He wasn't clapping, he wasn't smiling, just watching. The air carried the smell of cigarette smoke from the back tables, mixing with the faint tang of stage dust. Glasses clinked as waiters made their rounds, the ice cubes catching flecks of the spotlight as they passed. Elvis didn't break rhythm. Mid-verse, he gave the soldier the smallest of nods, a gesture most of the room would never notice. The soldier didn't move, but his eyes flicked downward for a moment, as if that simple acknowledgement carried weight. In the corner, an usher named Rick, working his first month on the job, noticed too. He would later say the soldier looked like a man somewhere else entirely, like part of him was already gone. Elvis turned slightly toward the band, and the brass hit the final note. The crowd cheered, but there was a different energy in the room now, something quieter, under the surface. The gold lame curtain behind the band shimmered as the lights shifted, shadows stretched across the stage. Elvis moved to the mic, gave a little half-smile and glanced toward the soldier again. Why was he here? Why this show? This night? A man about to leave the country could have been anywhere. With family, with friends, somewhere quiet. Instead he was here, sitting so close he could see the sweat at Elvis's temple. The song ended, and the band readied for the next number. The crowd's energy swelled again, oblivious to the undercurrent between the man on stage and the soldier below. Then, just as the next intro began, Elvis lifted a hand, the band quieted, the lights dimmed, and with that, something shifted. Elvis signals to the band and the tempo slows. Without warning, Elvis held up his left hand. The guitar intro froze mid-strum. Brass players lowered their horns, the drummer's sticks hovering above the snare. A ripple of murmurs ran through the crowd. Showroom regulars leaned toward each other. This wasn't part of the set list. Elvis shifted his weight, resting one hand on the mic stand. His eyes found the soldier again. "Son," he said, voice low but carrying through the hush. "You heading somewhere?" The soldier hesitated, like he wasn't sure if answering would break some invisible rule. Then, barely moving his lips, he nodded once. The air felt heavier now. The audience shifted in their chairs, craning for a better look. From the back, Usher Rick later recalled the way the soldier's jaw tightened. "You could see he was bracing," he said, like saying it out loud made it more real. Elvis stepped down from the small riser at center stage. The leather fringe on his jumpsuit swayed with each stride. He adjusted the scarf around his neck, leaned forward slightly. The soldier rose to his feet, not tall, not short, just an ordinary young man wearing the weight of the next 12 months in his eyes. "Vietnam, sir," he said. The words seemed to hang there, suspended above the soft hum of the amplifiers. Some in the audience lowered their eyes, others clasped their hands. The war was never far from anyone's mind in 1972, especially for those with sons, brothers or friends overseas. Elvis gave a single nod, not dramatic, not staged. Then he turned his head toward the band. "Let's do this one different. he said, open loop planted. No one knew what he meant yet. The drummer tapped a slow, deliberate beat. The bass followed, warm and steady. The room felt smaller somehow, as if the sound was pulling everyone closer. In the front row, the soldier's fingers twitched on the duffel strap by his chair. Elvis noticed. He walked a few steps closer to the stage edge, eyes never leaving the soldier's face. It wasn't pit, it wasn't performance, it was recognition. One man seeing another in a moment he'd never forget. From her seat 2 rows back, a woman clutched her program against her chest. She'd later say it felt like the room had turned into a living room. Just Elvis and that boy. Elvis adjusted the mic slightly, glanced at the brass section, and gave the faintest grin. Then he looked back to the soldier. You know this one, he said quietly, almost to himself. The first chords rolled out, softer than the crowd expected. The familiar opening of Can't Help Falling in Love began, but this time every note was for one man. The first notes floated out, slow and deliberate, not the brisk, crowd-pleasing tempo the band was used to. This was stripped down. Piano, bass, and the faint shimmer of cymbal. The soldier didn't move. His eyes stayed fixed on Elvis, as if he were memorizing every line of his face. Elvis started low. Wise men say, only fools rush in. Each word felt like it carried extra weight, lingering in the air just a little longer before fading into the next. The crowd, normally quick to sing along, stayed silent. Even the clinking of glasses seemed to stop. Warm stage lights spilled across the room, casting long, soft shadows over the front row. The faint scent of hairspray from the dinner tables, mixed with the sharper tang of cigarette smoke from the back. 2 seats over, a woman dabbed at her eyes with a folded napkin. Her husband reached for her hand. Elvis's gaze never left the soldier. He didn't look out over the audience, didn't glance toward the cameras. For those minutes, the man in green was the only person in the room. Halfway through, Elvis turned slightly to the lighting crew and gave a small motion with his fingers. A single spotlight snapped on, aimed directly at the soldier. Gasps rippled through the showroom. Guests twisted in their seats to see the young man illuminated against the darkened crowd. Some later swore they saw his lips form the words "thank you." Others said he just stood there, shoulders squared, swallowing hard. The duffel bag sat at his feet, its strap coiled loosely like it had been set down in a hurry. As the chorus swelled, Elvis stepped back from the mic just enough for the soldier to hear his own voice if he chose to sing. Whether he did or not, no one could say for sure. The band's sound wrapped around them both like a blanket. Behind the piano, Glenn D. Hardin kept his eyes on Elvis for cues. He'd been on stage with him for years, but later admitted, I'd never seen him lock in on someone like that. It wasn't for show. The final verse came, softer still. Take my hand. Take my whole life too. Elvis's right hand gripped the mic, knuckles white, as his left hand opened toward the soldier, not reaching, just an unspoken offering. The room was still. Even the waiters had stopped mid-step. The last note hung in the air, stretching past the beat where the crowd should have applauded. Then, almost reluctantly, the sound of hands meeting filled the space, starting at the back and rolling forward like a tide. Elvis lowered the mic. He glanced toward the soldier one last time, then stepped away from center stage, and then, without a word, he began to move down, through the narrow gap between the monitors. Off the edge of the stage, the audience parted, the carpet muffling his footsteps. Elvis was walking straight toward him. The carpet muted Elvis's steps, but the room still seemed to hear them. Conversations had stopped. Even the low hum of air conditioning felt louder. The soldier stood straight, hands now free of the duff. His boots were planted, heels together, like he was back on parade. Elvis reached him, the fringe of his jumpsuit swaying with each movement. In his right hand, he held one of the long white scarves draped around his neck. Every Vegas regular knew the move. Elvis would lean over, loop the scarf around a fan's neck, and give them a quick kiss on the cheek. But this time he didn't. He pressed the scarf into the soldier's hands, firmly, with both of his own covering. According to witnesses, Elvis leaned in then. No microphone, no camera angles. His lips moved just enough for the soldier to hear. Whatever he said made the young man's face shift. First a tight, almost smile, then a swallow so deep his throat bobbed. From the aisle, Usher Rick caught the moment. It was quick, he later said, like he gave him an order. But one the man wanted to follow. Elvis kept his hands there for a beat longer than necessary. His eyes didn't flick away to the crowd, didn't scan for applause, just the soldier, the hum of the stage. Amps filled the pause. A faint static buzz under the soft applause, still trailing from the last song. Overhead, an exit sign glowed red, its neon flicker reflecting faintly on the soldier's boots. Then for the briefest second, the soldier laughed. Not loud, just a small, almost disbelieving sound. Elvis's mouth curled at one corner. He patted the soldier's shoulder twice, solid and deliberate, before stepping back. No grand gesture, no lingering. He turned and walked toward the stage, the crowd's eyes following him the entire way. The band had been holding, waiting for their cue. But Elvis didn't pick up the mic. Instead, he swung himself back onto the stage, with surprising ease for a man in heavy boots and a rhinestone suit. From there the night moved on. Songs resumed, the crowd cheered again, drinks were served, laughter returned. But at that front table, the soldier stayed still, scarf in hand, gaze fixed on the stage. Back in the shadows, Rick noticed him reach into his jacket pocket. For a moment, the soldier's fingers rubbed the fabric of the scarf, as if committing its texture to memory. No one else in the audience knew that just a week later, thousands of miles away, something else from Elvis would find him. Some say it was planned from that very night. Others believe it was a last-minute gesture sparked by the moment they'd shared. But when the package arrived, it wasn't flowers, or a letter, or a signed photo. It was something that would carry music into the middle of a war. A week later, a package arrived at a military base over 7 days after the show. The soldier's unit mail clerk carried a long, rectangular package into the dimly lit rec room of a base somewhere in Southeast Asia. The cardboard edges were scuffed, but the address was clear. His name, written in a neat looping hand. He set it on the table, brushed the dust from his sleeves, and stared at it for a moment. In this place, mail was a lifeline, but a box that size, that was rare. The air smelled faintly of diesel from the generators outside, mixed with the sharper tang of damp canvas from the tent walls. Somewhere beyond, a helicopter's rotors thumped, fading into the distance. He sliced the tape with his pocket knife, careful not to damage whatever was inside. The flaps opened with a faint cardboard crackle. Inside, a hard-shell guitar case, its black surface worn smooth in places from travel. A thin layer of dust clung to the metal latches. He flipped them open one by one. The hinges creaked softly, the lid lifted, and there it was, a Gibson acoustic guitar, the wood honey-colored and gleaming despite the miles it had. The strings were fresh, tuned just enough to hum when he brushed them. Between the strings, tucked neatly near the bridge, was a folded piece of hotel stationery. In blue ink, "You'll always have a seat in the front." Elvis, he sat there for a moment, the note trembling slightly in his hand. Word spread fast. Within an hour, 3 men from his unit wandered in to see for themselves. By nightfall there were 10, and that's when it began. An impromptu ritual. Every evening, after patrols, after the rattle of gunfire had faded into the hills, the guitar came out. The soldier would sit on an overturned crate, fingers picking out the soft intro to Love Me Tender, or Can't Help Falling in Love. Voices would join in, rough, untrained, but steady. The glow from a single hanging bulb lit their faces, shadows, stretching against sandbag walls. The smell of dust and sweat lingered, but the music cut through. According to a letter he wrote home, it made us feel human in a place that tried to strip that away. One night, during a sudden downpour, they gathered in near darkness, the rain pounding the canvas roof like drumbeats. Still, the guitar played. Still, the voices rose. The scarf stayed with him too, folded inside the guitar case, its fabric taking on the faint scent of wood polish and tropical air. He never played without it nearby. In the months that followed, the Gibson became more than an instrument. It was a piece of another world, one where lights were warm, crowds were close, and a man in a white jumpsuit could make you believe you mattered.
And when the war finally ended for him, the guitar was the first thing he packed for the trip home. Years later, the soldier finally returned to Las Vegas with the guitar. It was the mid-1980s. Years after Elvis's passing, Las Vegas had changed. Taller hotels, brighter signs, louder streets, but the International Hotel showroom still stood. Though its nameplate had changed, the soldier, now older and moving a little slower, stepped through its doors. His uniform was long packed away, but the posture remained, straight-backed, eyes scanning the room. In his hands, a black hard-shell guitar case, worn at the corners, the handle polished smooth by years of carry. The smell inside the showroom was different now. Less cigarette smoke, more carpet cleaner and perfume from the passing crowd. Still, under it all, he swore he could catch a faint whiff of stage dust. The tribute act was already mid-song. The performer in a white jumpsuit with just enough swagger to make the front row swoon. But the soldier wasn't here for the imitation. His eyes locked on the same seat he'd occupied more than a decade earlier. He walked to it, placed the guitar case across his lap, and rested his hands on it. The metal latches gleamed under the dim table lamp. A woman at the next table leaned over. "That's a fine guitar," she said. He smiled, faint but genuine. It was a gift. The music on stage swelled, "Love Me Tender," and he let it wash over him. He hadn't heard it live since that night. The woman tilted her head. "From who?" His fingers brushed the case lid, pausing over the spot where the note had once been tucked under the string. "Elvis Presley," he said. Her eyebrows lifted. "You met him?" He nodded. "Front row. 1972. Right before I shipped out." She hesitated. "What did he say to you?" "For years, he'd kept it to himself. Maybe because it felt too personal. Maybe because it belonged to a moment no one else could fully understand. But now, with the guitar in his lap, the stage lights warm on his face, it felt right. He told me," the soldier said, voice low but steady, "come home safe, and don't you ever stop singing." The woman smiled. The song ended. The crowd applauded. He didn't stay long after that. The show was fine, the performer talented, but it wasn't about the music anymore. It was about the seat, the memory, and the promise he'd kept. As he stepped back into the bright Nevada night, the guitar case felt lighter than it had in years. Some legacies are written in stone, others in ink. This one was written in 6 words from a man who understood the power of a single moment. In a life marked by uncertainty, that night became his anchor, proof that kindness can stop the world, if only for a song. If this moved you, share it with someone who believes kindness can stop a room, and tell me, what's one small moment of humanity you'll never forget?